cuts into that innovation. And I know there's been testimony in Massachusetts, and there's media stories from Louisiana about that very notion. But I'd like to keep it moving just in the interest of time. So we submitted a handout here that I think Ben distributed, and I promise that we are focused on the factors.
Do we have that?
No, I'm printing it right now.
Perfect.
Okay, I did submit it late, so I didn't. It's on me, not Ben. Thank you, Ben. So, but I can just read some of this briefly. I will just say we will come back to these factors, and this is not going to be long, but I do think it's worth just doing a couple of predicates. So the first is the first part of this handout is simply the statute 33 VSA 3203 that sets up our office, and it lays out kind of what our role is here. And I just like to read a couple of pieces from that. The office shall, so that's required by statute, work in collaboration with relevant parties to strengthen services for children, youth, and families, analyze and monitor the development and implementation of federal, state, and local laws, regulations, and policies related to child, youth, and family welfare, and recommend changes where appropriate, review complaints from individual children, youth, and families, support children, youth, and families by providing information about rights and responsibilities, and then especially for our purposes today, provide systemic information concerning child, youth, and family welfare to the public, the governor, state agencies, legislators, and others as necessary. Number 6 on that list is our annual report, which is linked in our documents. And then pages 3 and 4 of the handout kind of outline our general position on Raise the Age in the form of a letter that we sent to DCF last week. I've highlighted the relevant parts. Number 1, I think Lauren and I want to say this again and again today, that what we heard from the workers and what we have been hearing from the workers, and in fact, Tracy herself, Ms. Casanova, has been incredibly helpful, and we have collaborated with her. Lauren's collaborated with her for years. All of what we heard, we think, is incredibly important, and that's why it's number 1 on this list. And that's what we want to center today. Well, we want to center the voice of children, youth, and families as our statute requires, but secondarily, we also want to center, we really want to center what the workers are going through. Number 2 on here is that number 1 is true, and yet we still should not delay Raise the Age. What I hear consistently, what I heard today, what I heard last week, is workers talking about the current system we have right now. And what I hear clearly is I don't hear a whole lot of dispute about the numbers and the projections for what bringing in 19-year-olds would do. What I hear is the current system is not functioning, and it's harming kids, and it's harming workers, and they are directly connected, right? And so we are focused today on exactly how to remedy those problems long term. And here I guess I'd like to address this trolley problem. I think it's an interesting rhetorical problem, Senator Hashim. I also think, though, that I don't know of any actual real world situation in which that has actually occurred, right? It is a thinking exercise. And my point here is not to argue with that as a concept. My point is the way to resolve that apparent contradiction is to look at these problems through the eyes of children and youth, primarily. And when you do that, you make life better for both the children and youth and the workers. If you go the other way and think we're in crisis, we have to have facilities, we have to fix things for the workers tomorrow, you maybe fix things for the workers, but I would argue, I think it just builds a system that perpetuates that crisis rather than remedy it. So that's what I would say with respect, Senator Hashim, is that the way to push through that apparent paradox is to look at this through the eyes of youth. So one of our proposals for the factors that should be in Act, is it 58? Sorry, my numbers are mixed up. Is that we absolutely have to hear directly, not just through us, directly from youth who would be impacted by Raise the Age. So a 19-year-old who who would be treated differently with the effect with the passage of Raise the Age as it's supposed to go into effect this July 1st. And we can certainly facilitate bringing that person here, but I don't think the legislature should make any changes to this law without hearing directly from such a youth. If we can't find one, then that's on us. We'd be happy to but I think that's crucial, because I think,
That'd be great.
we've heard a lot
When
from
the
the
bill
workers.
gets to the House, I'd suggest you do it.
Okay,
Because
thank you. So
honestly,
I appreciate
we're
that.
on the timeline here.
I appreciate that,
I
Senator.
got 2 weeks left to get bills out. I've got a lot of bills.
I will say again respectfully,
I understand what you're saying.
in October, in front of Joint Justice, we made the same suggestion.
Right.
So, and we will keep doing it, and I understand that it's complicated. On page 5, there is a list, a summary of long-term changes that we think are crucial to improve these systems. And I think I'll just summarize briefly by saying, we are talking about building apparently a 15-bed facility based on a number that is not based on data. And I think we should think about the cost of that. Buildings are expensive, they take a long time to build, and as soon as you build them, they're outdated, right? I think we could use that money much more efficiently. That would again help children and youth if we focus on the service side and if we focus on these top level suggestions on page 5 of our handout. The data system, I think, is the fulcrum for all of that work. And I would encourage, in the interest of time, I won't go through that, but there's a part of our handout explains that in detail. It opens the door to, I would estimate, $50 million in federal money that we could leverage for the state of Vermont. It doesn't all show up tomorrow in one bank account. It takes work, but we are under leveraged on an incredible amount of federal money that we're just leaving on the table. We had a conversation yesterday with Wyoming. Fewer people than us. Their child welfare system is not doing great, to be honest, from the numbers. They brought down $500,000 just for legal costs last year. And our main point of the call with them was, how hard is this? Do you need a data system to do this? And the takeaway from, the TLDR was, it's not that complicated. And the problem here is I just don't see a lot of work happening to do that bigger picture. So that's another sort of a finding, another reporting factor that we would encourage. And then I've included the original Act 201, raise the age, the big picture, the legislative findings on page 7 of our handout. I won't read through those, but I think, maybe I'll just read one. So, B is, in order to accomplish these goals, the system should be based on the implementation of data-driven, evidence-based practices that offer a broad range of alternatives, such that the degree of intervention is commensurate with the risk of reoffense. So I think we just need to come back to our core principles here, because I think that, again, the needs of workers are incredibly important. I think we have to fit that into the bigger picture. And so then pages 9 through 11 are 9 through 12 are a memo on exactly some of the financial implications of us not having this data system. And then pages 13 through 17, include statutory language from Act 11 of 2018, which was the big bill. And in that, there was $7 million set aside through the tobacco settlement fund for a number of things. On page 17 of our handout, you will see that, 18, that some of the money was set aside to support and improve child safety, provide early screening, provide access to services designed to address screening outcomes, improve the timeliness of adjudication, ensure due process, serve the best interests of children, etc. My understanding is there's more than $5 million sitting in this account still that has been not unleveraged. And I believe there is legislative movement towards using some of that money for the state match to do the DCF data system, which would open the door to all of these high-level changes. And so, I think just to sum up, and I think Lauren has a couple of comments, we have to hear from youth. Approaching our current crisis from a youth perspective helps both youth and workers. There's another part of our statute here related to restraint and seclusion. And I know Senator Sears, I heard you make a comment about our office and Depot, about us coming down on them. And actually, I was curious about what you were referring to, because I don't believe we've actually, we worked closely with Jim Henry. We took a tour. I think he was very collegial with us. And what we were coming down on, if anything, was our statute requires DCF to report data to us about restraint and seclusion of youth in custody. And we got one one little set of data from Depot, et cetera. And so what we were saying was, there's a statute that requires this. It is a DCF shall, and it's not happening, right? And so there's an existing statute that is about caring for the safety of kids in custody, and we don't have the information. And our duty, again, is to take that information and inform you all. And so I think that was that. And so I would also ask that restraint and seclusion data be added to the list of reporting points.
But isn't that a sign of problem?
What a sign? Yes, exactly, absolutely.
So, but it's a sign of inappropriate placement.
I agree. Yes, it's a sign of a data system that I mean, I think DCF is they didn't not send it to us because they didn't want to. They didn't send it to us because the data systems are make these kinds of data pulls very, very challenging. And so our response is not, you don't want to stand up for kids. Our response is, how do we help you solve that problem, right? And so that's what this handout is. And I was heartened to see that one of the factors, the comprehensive child welfare information system, was added to that. So I think the final thing is just about investing in children and youth, and I think we really need to reconsider. I think it is not a small. The difference between 10 beds in a secure facility on a campus in Virginia or South Burlington and 15 beds could be $5 million over 5 years. I mean, it's a hugely important issue.
It's an important issue, I agree. It's part of the capital investment bill and really belongs in the institutions committee. But I'm happy to weigh in if the committee wants to add, and I'm hoping we can weigh in on the women's facility as well, because there's concern about building a larger than necessary facility. But I don't know, I mean, we haven't really discussed the 15 beds, but that would be a thing that would be, I think we're a couple of years down the road before they're even discussing, the actual building and putting it into the capital bill, so there's time there. But we certainly could ask, ask for a report on the permanent as well as temporary.
I think what I'd like to propose, Senator, is that again be
I think
added.
that's the difference. The temporary is 4 beds. The permanent, so we can get a report, just add the permanent, any information on the permanent.
We'd like to understand where the number comes from.
That's not the secure residential.
No, it'd be with secure residential. There's a temporary, is in Middlesex, that's 4 beds. Mm-hmm. There's also 3 beds in Brattleboro.
Not secure facility.
Oh, that's not secure.
And they are under construction.
They're under.
Yeah, so
they're the more the mental health beds, right?
We would report on that as well. I think that residential might be the other.
But any report on the permanent, so temporary and permanent.
And Senator, just to clarify, the permanent facility, we've been talking about 14 beds. I believe it's 6 for secure crisis stabilization, right. 8 for longer-term secure treatment. Yeah. And that's not going to be in the capital bill because it's a design build lease situation. And we're making decisions on an RFP. We should choose a developer soon. And then we'll have a year-long of design process and a year-long construction. And as part of that design process, we intend to involve the high-end system of care task force group, stakeholder group,
would that
to be a part of that.
Be available to 18 and 19-year-olds?
18-year-olds for sure. Maybe Tyler and Erica can speak to that. I don't think 19-year-olds must raise the age in face.
Well, assuming we've raised the age.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I obviously it wouldn't be until they've raised the age.
Just to clarify the ask there, Senator, I think I heard 15 before I heard 14, and we would like to understand, and we think it's important for the General Assembly to understand where the number comes from, because we've seen this proxy number of, well, pre-pandemic we had X and now we have Y, so therefore Z, the difference is, is what we need. But I think the pre-pandemic number may not be the right one either. And so I think from my perspective, it's again, what are the treatment needs of the children, and then how are we going to meet those needs, right? So
I can say this because I'm not a member of the administration. I think the previous administration of the Agency of Human Services and DCF artificially lowered the numbers.
there is a report that we would encourage everyone to read that DCF is, I believe, well, sorry, that folks in DCF who have knowledge about these issues have encouraged us to read, that I think would be worth reading. And it's
Senator
AHS.
Bowski has a comment.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. They are for Chris. So the last time you were here, I asked if it was 14 or 15 beds, and you said 15. So it seems like the number keeps moving.
Yeah,
so I'm
I
a
can
little.
respond to that.
I can sort of,
Erica and I talked about that after. You want to go ahead, Erica, and explain that?
Sure, it's 14 beds. There's an additional bed that was in a sort of in a nurse's station. If someone comes in late at night and they need to do an assessment, and we've been told from BGS that is not counted as an actual bed because it's not in a in a room where a kid would be typically placed while living here in the facility. So the actual number is 14. That extra bed got sort of mixed in.
May I add just a little addition to that, further detail to that context, because I think that's a fair question that it's been confusing. The original design that came out that is now going to go through the facility planning group, so it's part of the design build conversation of appropriate size, and what the Office of Child and Family Youth Advocate is discussing. How do we have these discussions around what the methodology, what the thinking is, what is appropriate? All that's still on the table, and the reason we had 14 beds is the original design is 6 beds that are part of the treatment program. 8 beds are part of a crisis stabilization program. Both would be locked. And then there is 1 additional bed that is essentially a quarantine bed at point of intake in case of something like COVID or another pandemic or something like that a person might need a night before they can step into the room. But it's not one of the functioning beds of either of the program. It's just provides the opportunity, if necessary, to step somebody in for a public health perspective.
I'd like to get the conversation moving away from the number of beds. That's something that we can discuss later date, I think.
So my other question for the commissioner, then I won't ask my follow-up, is how a secure facility is defined. What does that mean? What does that look like? Does that mean there's a lock on the door? Does that mean there's razor wire? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'll defer to the experts here, Erica and Tyler, to talk about the definition of secure and what we intend that to be.
I'll say that how we define secure is that there are locked doors. It is not a delayed locked door. It is a door that requires a staff to open the door. As we'd originally envisioned it, this would be locks at the room level and at the facility level. We are having conversation right now about the necessity of that for the Middlesex program, and that can be part of the ongoing conversation around the design build of a permanent facility as well. But I would say at its most basic level, there are locks at the door. We have no interest in building a treatment program that has razor wire on it. That has been kind of a starting point. The design that we started with, and again, it's just a starting point, has minimal fencing. The idea is to use the building itself to enclose spaces that we can use so that it doesn't feel like it is a prison environment or a penitentiary environment that might have something like razor wire or anything along those lines. It is really just the lockability of the door that turns it into the secure definition.
Okay. I mean, it's still, if you're able to lock someone in their room, it still sounds an awful lot like a prison. That's all.
Or a locked door.
Yeah.
I think facilities can look a lot of different ways. I've seen a whole spectrum of facilities, including, in New Mexico, they built this, they built 100 and something beds, and, to their credit, when I was working in those facilities, they were down, 80%, right? And so I think there's some encouraging proposals in terms of a secure facility, but I also think it all depends on what it actually looks like. And right now, there's a lot up in the air, but I'd like to make sure Lauren has time.
I would say as well that our state residential treatment program regulations define what a secure facility is, and that can answer many of your questions.
We'll provide those to the committee.
I would like to take the opportunity, if I could, to also comment on the reporting factors.
Okay, we're running out of time.
I will be fast, I promise. Because I really want to highlight what Commissioner Winters has testified to and what the family services workers and DCF staff have commented on, because of the great respect and appreciation I have for the work that they are doing. And what I think is lost in these points right here is what you said, Senator, is it's an all hands on deck, right? And so I don't see where Dale is contributing to this report. I don't see where DMH is contributing to this reporting. I also have deep respect for the residential treatment programs that are serving the children and youth. And I would also like to see DEVA reporting out on the private non-medical institution PNMI rate setting, to see how much support programs are getting to shore up their staffing, to have healthy retention of staffing as well. I think that is a major important factor to achieve what is outlined here and to fully implement Raise the Age. I would also say that that is progressing us towards what the Agency of Human Services residential analysis from October 2020 really recommended Vermont do, is create this centralized system of care across departments, across the agencies for children and youth. And I would also encourage where DOC and the Judiciary need to report out as well, and really name them so it's not all falling on DCF.
The Judiciary?
And that goes to my second point, okay. That I would hope that we can include data from 18-year-olds that are in Raise the Age and reporting on how that implementation is progressing to see how the numbers are changing. I think right now we can also ask that between now to July, how many safe case closures could we achieve? Could DCF achieve? I still say the collective way. And then also keep an eye on the 19-year-old case filings and specific unduplicative youth that represents, so we can still assess that impact on work caseload that DCF is really speaking about. And I think that is important. And I would throw in, since Tyler mentioned it, the interest of justice hearings, the number of those, to see how that is impacting the system and judiciary capacity as well. And then I just got the updated list, so if there isn't language in there, I hope that we could at least say that not all these requirements need to be met in order to implement by 2025. And I think explicitly saying that is significant. And then lastly, I think if Vermont and the administration is worried about public safety, if we want to reduce recidivism, if we want to help children and youth, I think we just let Raise the Age go into effect July 1. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Okay, well, as we mark up, we'll look at that. I am intrigued by the idea that DMH is left out of this and Dale is left out of this yet. They are contributing to the problem that DCF is having, but it's been true of corrections as well, by the way, where people are in, yeah, it's concerning to me that because a kid with an intellectual disability commits a crime, they become a delinquent and then on DCF. If they don't commit a crime, they remain under the appropriate.
I really appreciate that, Senator. I know you mentioned that in the last hearing, and I think, we've both done a lot of work of, on youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Maybe if we come back to this, we should have DMH and on the mental health side and word that section on the mental health. And have Dale reporting on the section on developmental disability.
It connects to the staffings as well. We got data from DCF about the staffings from 2 years ago. They've stopped counting, and this is in our annual report. The top 8 longest staffings, the most intense staffings they've had, were all youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Right. And one of our key recommendations is that the KC Family Programs has offered, it's on the table for DCF to analyze those cases to see how they got to where they were. Because the best thing to do is keep kids out of foster care to begin with. And I meant to emphasize this. The best thing we can do, it saves millions of dollars. It eases all of these pressures on the system, is to keep kids out of the system at the beginning. And our rates are still way too high. And there's help available, and KC has offered that. And I'm not sure where we are with that, but I think it's just doing a small microcosm case review of those intense staffings to see how those kids wound up in the system, how the staffings went, what services, to the point about Dale and the designated agencies, how could we have supported them along the way? Not to blame anybody, right? But just from a systemic perspective of how can we improve this system going forward?
It's asking the system of either Department of Corrections or Department of Children and Families to be all things to all people, and that's impossible. Mm-hmm. And that's where and those, at least, and I don't know if it's true in DCF, but in corrections, those are the people that stay on detention the longest, because they have no other placement. So, and many of them committed very serious crimes. No question about that.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah.
From murder on down, but that is a huge problem in the system. I don't know how other states deal with it, but it's alarming to hear it now is in the DCF.
Right. What's taking up what's the systemic energy and causing the biggest stress are young people in the foster care chain system who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's not the bulk of the statistical young people who would come in as 19-year-olds and to raise the age, right? We're really talking about, we're using this discussion about raise the age to talk about this other issue. And so our point is, let's work on the other issue primarily, right? And let's help the kids and let's help the workers. So
we're going to take a break.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. So
thank you.
So 11 o'clock, we come back with a further discussion about S58 and